All right, here we go. Today we have legendary Baltimore street figure Rudy Williams, once dubbed a super kingpin by law enforcement. In fact, David Simon, the creator of The Wire, once wrote a major article comparing your time on the street to England's King Richard III, who's considered one of the bloodiest kings of all time. At one point, you were sentenced to life plus 130 years by the feds in the 90s, but now you're out after serving 31 years. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is your first time here, so I want to start in the very beginning. So you were born in the 50s.
54.
And you actually grew up in a stable two-parent household.
True. Yep.
Both of your parents worked. What kind of jobs did your mom and dad have during that time when you were a kid?
I can't remember exactly what my mother had, but my father was a truck driver.
Okay. And there was 8 kids altogether, right?
Right.
And, you guys, were, struggling with so many kids, but, you guys still made ends meet. And growing up, you didn't really feel like you were poor.
No, I didn't.
Okay. But then at one point, at age 13, you started getting in trouble.
I was getting in trouble before 13. 13 is when I got punished for getting in trouble. I was sentenced to Boys Village.
Okay, that's a juvenile facility.
Right.
Okay, and what actually did you do to get sentenced?
Truancy. Not wanting to go to school.
Okay, so relatively minor stuff.
Right.
Okay, but once you actually got into this juvenile program, everyone else in there were there for rougher things.
True. Mostly everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so what started to happen once you actually got in that system?
Well, let me go in detail. I remember it was a shock, because the judge I had been to court like 5 or 6 times for truancy, and each time I was sent home. But this time, I remember the judge saying, I don't know what to do. He told my mother that, he's been in front of me like 5 or 6 times. He's been warned, he still continue to hope school. So I don't know what to do, The only thing I can think of is to send him away, And my mother kind of agreed with that, right? So he decided to send me Boys Village for a 30-day commitment, depending on my behavior. If I do good, I can go home after 30 days. If not, then I'll stay longer. And so after the court session, he took me up in a bullpen. It was like 5 or 6 other little boys in there waiting to go to Boys Village. They allowed my mother to come in, and I was really hurt. I wanted to cry, but the most I could do was a couple snipples.
Okay, so now you're in the system, and I think you compared it almost to like crime school once you actually got in there.
Right. It was like a crime school. At that age, we brag on what we locked up for. It was sort of like an accomplishment.
Okay, so then you come in as a petty criminal, just not going to school. But then when you get out, at that point, you become a real criminal?
Yeah, I graduated. You could say that.
Yeah. Okay, so what type of things were you doing once you got out?
I was stealing cars, doing burglaries, and basically robbing other little kids of their lunch money on their way to school. We was hopping buses. Now, I was doing that prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing that before. We was doing a little bit of everything.
Well, when you went in, both your parents were in the house, but I guess when you got out, your dad ended up divorcing your mom and leaving the house, right?
Not that time, no.
Oh, that came later?
Yeah, that came later when I was about 16, 17 years old.
Okay. And I guess, your dad just was having a hard time trying to support 8 kids and really feel like a man, while doing it. So he just ended up leaving?
No, he got put out, basically.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah. My mother and father was divorced. He got put out. Yeah.
Okay. How much strain did that put on your family when now the man of the house is gone?
Well, I wasn't there when that happened. When that happened, I was up, let me see. I maybe was up Victor Color. So I wasn't in the house to be aware that. Even when I was home, I really wasn't aware of what was going on,
Okay.
because I was always in the street,